Hey guys, so do you need a incredibly angsty friends to lovers book? I'm here. I'm here with one that is so friends to lovers. That is literally its title. That's right, today I am here to give you an ARC review of Sally Blakely's debut novel, Friends to Lovers. I think it's important to say that this is Sally Blakely's debut novel because it definitely is in some areas a little bit rough around the edges. But what I really want to talk about today is just like the emotion that I think really comes out of it, because it hooked me. But there are some ways in which I think it could have been done a little bit better. But wow, this book is a chronicle of pent-up feelings. So Friends to Lovers is the story of friends who become lovers. I know, you're very surprised. This is the story of Joni and Ren. Joni and Ren have grown up being best friends. Not only are they best friends, but their families are best friends. Ren's mom and Joni's mom were college roommates who were best friends, or at least college best friends. And they and their eventual husbands are just like those like tight-knit like groups who also basically like raise their kids to be best friends. And they have a summer house where the family bought that house together and they summer there every summer. So there has never really been a time for Joni and Ren when it hasn't been Joni and Ren. And of course, Ren and Joni have other siblings. Joni has one sister and Ren has a brother and a sister, but they've always been just like this. However, when the book opens, there are a couple of things happening. First, you learn that Ren and Joni have not spoken for 2.5 years because of something that happened. You do not know at the opening of the book what that is, only that they haven't been speaking. This is the first time they've ever had this happen to them, and that most of the family does not know. The entire two families are convening at the beach house because Joni's sister Stevie is getting married to someone named Leo, who is in a band with Ren. Most of them live in Portland, Oregon, which is also where Joni had been living prior to a move about 5 or so years ago to New York City, where she was working at an animation studio. So she's also holding another secret. Joni was recently fired from her job in New York. So she is trying to hide that from the entire family. She and Ren have to hide the fact that they haven't been speaking for their family because, of course, this is her sister's wedding and she's just trying to keep the drama out. This is a single POV novel, but it is not a single timeline novel. So while this book will start in the week or so leading up to Stevie's wedding, it will go back and forth in time to some very important points on the journey for Ren and Joni and their relationship. This kind of started when they all went to the same college, but when Ren and Joni were graduating, they were like, how are we going to be able to keep, each other in our lives? Joni was moving to New York, and they agreed to always be each other's +1 at weddings that they were invited to. And so this is how, even as they have been having increasingly adult lives, they have been seeing each other intermittently throughout these years. And at that point, there are some things that happen, including the last time they saw each other 2.5 years ago at the wedding of Ren's sister, Sasha. There is a very big cast of characters in this novel. It is very important to this book to not only introduce you to the relationships between Ren and Joni, but also their relationships with their siblings, their relationship with their parents. Particularly salient is Joni's relationship with her mom, who is a therapist. And one of the reasons Joni is keeping so many of these things secret is that she just doesn't want to get interrogated and have this whole thing kind of blow up. The plot to this book really doesn't take all that much to kind of explain, because the plot in the present is the lead up to Stevie's wedding, the various like group activities and stuff that they're doing. And then, you know, when it goes back in time, it will tell you about a wedding that Ren and Joni attended. The tension in the novel is because in the ones that have happened in the past, you know that something is eventually going to happen there that is going to cause Ren and Joni to like grow a rift. And then in the present, it's this like this very, very key Joni exploring the pain of having lost Ren, how deep their friendship is, what it means to her. Again, we never get Ren's side of the story. I think there's a reason for this, which is that Ren will tell her at some point, like, I've always been more sure of what's happening here, and it's more of Joni's path to unpick what's happening emotionally. But because of that, it does feel a little one-sided in certain situations where we're not really sure what's going on with Ren. For a book that doesn't have like a lot of really insane plot points, it does feel like there is a lot of emotion carried in all of these scenes. It's just very angsty emotion. And it's also, for me, an emotion of dread. So, like I said, we are not told in the beginning what happened between Ren and Joni to make them not talk for 2.5 years. You can kind of start to guess. There's like some context clues that are given to you. But I think my main issue with this novel is that in the present timeline, Joni and Ren start kind of falling back into a more romantic relationship before you've learned what like broke them apart in the first place. And for me, as a romance reader, I found that very concerning because there was any number of things or ways or like things that could have happened to cause them to, again, these people who have been built into each other's lives for their entire lifetimes, from baby to like into their 20s, to not speak for 2.5 years. And I was like, this had to be pretty momentous for this to happen. And I was just really, really uncomfortable with the idea of being okay with them being back together-ish in the present timeline without knowing why they'd broken up in the first place. If this book has one misfire, it is definitely that, because for me, it made me very uncomfortable about their re-burgeoning friendship, relationship, romance, without being able to put it in context. I think the most important thing I can say in this review is, if you are also worried about this, that the thing that they like broke up about in the past is not anyone's deal breaker. Like, in terms of like, I won't read books where there's like cheating or like anything kind of really, really explosive like that. The reason that they ended up not speaking for 2.5 years, by the time it is revealed, honestly feels a little anticlimactic. But again, I spent a huge chunk of like the middle of the book really stressed about it. So without spoiling it, if that is a stressor for you also, you can kind of take that off the table. This is a book to read if you want a book where like not a lot happens but emotional work. And that emotional work, like I said, is not only between Ren and Joni, which is very angsty, and mostly them, but also like these like side characters that kind of come in and out of the story. I do think that way more could have been done with them, given how developed I wanted them to be, and given how many of them there were. But I really did appreciate that Sally Blakely not only was like, okay, there's a lot of emotional work happening here with my main characters, but I'm also going to involve the outside characters and not leave it an insular story, which definitely could have happened. This is the type of book that I can't say the reading experience was enjoyable, because again, it just felt like bottled up, angsty, like unrequited / complicated love that I was just like reading and reading and reading. And then when I realized that we weren't going to find out why they'd broken up before they had kind of gotten back together, then I was just like stressed. And then to kind of have it all resolve in the end, and it just says some really smart things about love. It says some really smart things about growing up. and the need to, even though like you've known someone for a very long time, to grow up by yourself, but also to not be afraid of something that might be just like right in front of you, and not be so afraid of losing something that you lose it anyway. So again, I really liked it, but it was really angsty. This is the type of book that makes me excited to read Sally Blakely's next book, if that makes sense, in the way that I see a lot of things, a very emotional way of writing, a really community focused and family focused story that includes these side plots and these other things that are going on that are also really interesting, and maybe the beats aren't hit like all in the way that I wanted, and maybe some characters are more underdeveloped and I think they could have been more developed, or like had more reason to be in the story, when they were just kind of left really interesting and open-ended. Not in the way of like there's going to be another book, but like I needed a little bit more type of a thing. So it's the type of book where I loved a lot of the major elements, and I think that it has the making of like 100% a 5-star read, just not in this exact formula. So Sally Blakely is definitely an author that I want to add to my watch list for her next release. Like I said, this is her debut according to the internets. It has the marks of that, but it also has the marks of some books that moving forward, as that type of style gets more like refined, could be like really, really excellent and really emotional and really wonderful if more of the technical writing elements get kind of smoothed out. If you need that type of like, you know, angsty, pining, you know, I want to love you so much, my heart hurts, but my head is in total war with myself, this is definitely a book for you. Even though, like I said, you have to expect it to not be the smoothest technical writing experience, there is definitely a lot of like emotional feeling in this book that you can go on that journey with. It's not going to be the wildest plot. It's going to be a fairly like simple plot as far as romances go, and some of them can get really ridiculous, but as long as you want that emotional ride, this is for you, and I very much look forward to Sally's next one. So thank you to the publisher and Edelweiss for my ARC. This book is not out quite yet. This is an ARC review, but this is your chance now to go look for it as a waitlist at your local library, or maybe see if your local bookstore is going to carry it, however you get your books. But keep an eye out for this one if that's the type of story that you want to read, because it will definitely take you on a ride. Thanks, guys. Bye.